Yeah, we're live.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again, everyone. Welcome to another very interesting and rather a creative new session of Beyond Code, where the motive of these sessions, Beyond Code podcast, is to kind of bring today's tech leaders at the forefront, their stories at the forefront, and make sure whatever they have done in their life through impacting various industries, maybe a lot of work they have done at large enterprises, startups, or any other work which they are doing, right? Make sure that you are getting inspired out of these, the journey of these people, right? And take some inspiration out of their lives, right? So yeah, that's the whole motive of these beyond code sessions that we're happening with one of our leaders. We are also going live on, not only going live on LinkedIn, but we are also all these podcasts will be available on Spotify. So do log in there to try to search for Beyond Code sessions, and hopefully you'll have a good listening experience at those sessions, right? So talking about good experiences and making a lot of creative decisions in their life, let me introduce you today's guest. We have with us Muralidharan V. Murali heads engineering for a very interesting B2B SaaS product called Clary Capital. He was a key engineer responsible for the acquisition of Light.com by Google and for the acquisition becoming successful at Google itself. Murali was also one of the founders of a company called Wingman, which was again acquired by Clary and became Clary Copilot. Outside of the work, he is passionate about scuba diving, snowboarding, and playing a lot of sports. Right? So, if you see the entire journey, and there is an underlying theme to these journeys of Murli, is right. The theme is how he has started again from the scratch by building some interesting startups, get acquired by people, and then again he was onto his next venture. Without further ado, first of all, thank you so much, Modi. Thank you so much for joining in, taking time out of your busy schedule, and that was quite an interesting career progression which we have seen, right? Just initial, just opening comments from you, Murli, before we dive into your entire journey, right, from your schooling to your PhD to your first venture, then opening up the entire Pandora's box, right? So just opening comments, Murli, from your side.
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me here, Amitesh. It's awesome to be speaking to you and the audience of Rebase that we have here. In my career journey, and whatever I've been working on so far, I think this largely like it's been I started working in 2005, and it's been almost 2 decades now. A lot of it was driven just by me looking for the next interesting thing that I could do, right? But also also when once we start something, to go deep in it, until something comes out of it, right? Like that's pretty much how I've approached it. Um, so I'm happy to share it. I'm happy that I'm here to share about it, talk about it, and hopefully it's interesting to some folks. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to share, go into anything at any level of depth.
Certainly. I think it will be quite an amazing next 60 minutes for me as well, because the trajectory which you have gone through your and especially in the industry where it is said that tech industry is the most volatile compared to any other industry, right? You would never know what will happen in the next month, forget about next year or next couple of years, right? And you have seen it all, done it all, kind of a career so far. And so I'm really looking forward to this, and obviously to whomsoever is listening to this podcast right now, maybe live or maybe on any other platform, feel free to pitch in your questions. We'll take those questions at the end of the discussion, and obviously if you have any questions, please log into Recro website, and you'll get a lot of information, not only from Murali's perspective, but obviously a lot of other angles that that you'll see in maybe help you in your journey as well, right? So Murali, let's start. I think with every guest, I generally have a set first question, and then the conversation takes forward. And the first question is, obviously about your childhood, and there is a peculiar reason that we pick, because in my opinion, every successful people, or maybe people who are striving for success, they have a profound impact of their upbringing, maybe schooling, maybe any incident, something that has really impacted their attitude towards learning, right? So just want to kind of dial back to your childhood, want to understand what was those moments while you were growing up that created your inclination towards tech in general, maybe coding in particular, but largely in tech. What was those things that really draw towards tech? What was what at that time was not a big thing, but right now if you see that is the entire fulcrum of your career, right? What was those moments, Murli, that you can vividly recall, and maybe some stories behind those?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, that I've had some of that in my childhood. Like, I grew up in Hyderabad. My dad worked for a bank, right? And something interesting, like when I was in eighth class, like my dad for his work, like he would bring home a lot of work, right? And then a lot of it is spreadsheets, and he bought a computer. It was like it had a monochrome monitor, and it was a 486. Most of the kids listening to this probably don't know what I'm talking about even.
Yeah.
But it was and and he brought that computer home, and that was the most fascinating thing to me, right? And I was especially fascinated with programming from then. Like I started programming with GW Basic on it. I
Mhm.
spent a lot of my free time, 8th to 10th, just like I can't believe I had a GW Basic book which I knew end to end. I knew pretty much. I've used every command in the book. I used to write pretty long programs. Like and looking back, it's crazy. It never used functions.
Yeah.
It's like lots of line numbered lines with go tos everywhere. But that's what I did, and I used to write like pretty complex stuff. Given that for fun, and I always I've enjoyed programming since then. I always imagined that I wanted, like, to me, it was like being someone who enjoyed that much. It was incredible that there was a job where I could like program and I would get paid for it. Like, and so like I wanted to study computer science because it was like math is the most like, and I was very fascinated by computers in general, programming also, and I was really like, uh, and I used to do a lot of it. So that's what got me started, right? And I've ever since had like a very very deep interest in programming and tech, and been fascinated by computers, and I don't think that's gone away.
Fantastic. I
Yeah, I've been
think
fortunate.
yeah, 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 and lot of that curiosity to kind of deep dive into new stuff, right? That stems from these kind of experiences in your early childhood, right? If you are typing some lines of code, and you see things that you wanted to build was building in front of your screen, right? That excitement, that dopamine hit, and I'm glad that it is still there, Murli. I think even the scale has become so big that instead of getting those plus output, or maybe some pyramid that you used to do in basic and Pascal, uh, that has turned into huge products, right? The scale has changed, but that excitement of building something new and solving problems is still there. Fantastic. I think glad to hear that. And just a segue from that question, right? Uh, this gave your profoundness towards tech, or computer in general, gave a huge impetus to your studies also, right? I think you did masters, then you went on for pursuing your PhD. So just want to, for the understanding of our viewers who are still in that phase where they are learning, or maybe final year of their studies, what was that decision that that made you choose going to first completing your masters and PhD instead of directly taking a plunge into the tech industry, Murali? What was those pros and cons or balance that you weighed and took a decision that no, I will first complete my studies and then I will take a career in tech industry?
Actually, Amritesh, I did the exact opposite. I did not do a master's or a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I went to college. I studied computer science at IIT Madras. I finished my bachelor's, and the default path was for me was to go to a master, go to a PhD. A lot of my batchmates are doing. I was also on that path. I was applying to PhD programs, right? And it was kind of uh, I was going to go do like a PhD in computer architecture, but then I went on to do an internship at Intel
Mm-hmm.
in Bangalore, and that actually changed my perspective. I figured, the corporate world is not as evil as some of my profs made it out to be. That it was fun making money, and actually more than any of that, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to spend like the possibly next several years, and then possibly a large section of my life
Mm-hmm.
just worrying about a narrow part of the computer world, of the tech world. Like I just wasn't like feeling like, hey, I want to spend all that time focusing deep in computer architecture, which is the path I was taking. And I actually decided to drop my applications and then went on to take a job. So I no, I did not do my master's or PhD.
Fantastic. I
I
think
ended up come out of college. Yeah.
yeah. So a lot of insights to be drawn, from this decision, right? Because you were considering to kind of go for masters and PhD with a very a particular focus in mind, right? And a lot of our audiences right now, they are also in that dilemma whether to go for something that may give an edge in terms of depth in their knowledge, or maybe kind of help them maybe narrow down their focus on which stream they should be choosing, right? So what I could draw from this from this insight of yours is, Murli, that if you have that knack of working on something which is always changing, or maybe solving regular problems, keep on solving those problems, then I think you should not be taking something which is as focused or as narrow as a PhD. You should try to keep a inch mile, or a not a inch a mile deep kind of view, right? A wider perspective, and then try to narrow down your career as you are going forward.
Yeah, and I think of myself as a bit of a generalist. I mean, of course, at
Yeah.
that time, I did not really have that perspective. Through my career, I've had that. My perspective has changed,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, when you're looking at a PhD or something, the thing to really think about is: Am I interested? Am I so passionate about this area of assuming most of the folks here are computer science folks, if am I so passionate about my area of computer science that I'm into, that I want to pursue that for at least the next decade, right? And if you are, then by all means go for it, but have that um, um, I would like in at least introspect on that.
Yeah, I think I just, while you were telling me about generalist and specialist kind of bifurcation, right? There is a beautiful book by Adam Grant, right, called The Originals, right? He in that book, he emphasizes a lot of example that generalist is the one who changes who changes the world compared to specialists, right? And he gave examples, Roger Federer and Tiger Woods, right? So again, when you were saying that it's okay to be both, right? It's not like you are generalist or you are specialist, right? It should be, you should be more passionate towards what you are trying to do in that, in that particular frame of mind, right? That's more important. Fantastic. I think, let's now move ahead to
Yeah.
another part. While you took that decision, you plunged into the industry, right? And you started up with your startup like.com in Bangalore, right? So how did your time at like.com, especially in Bangalore, because obviously you're not staying in Bangalore, you came to a city, that was kind of still it is tech hub, right? How did that reshape your entire perspective on real world challenges, because that was your maybe like real, first face off with the real time challenges, right? How did that time at like.com, how do you now go back and see what were the learnings from those time spent in like.com, Murali?
Yeah, so actually, Light.com was a startup I joined like 1 year into
Hmm.
my career. So I took a job out of college at a place called Trilogy. I spent about a year there, and at that time, my mindset was I'm looking for hard problems to be involved with, right? And I was looking, I'd interviewed at a bunch of places. The thing like.com at that time, like they originally were called ria.com. They were pivoting. When I joined them, they were pivoting away from that idea. Ria.com at that time was an internet darling. It was Silicon Valley darling. They were the first to do face recognition on photo albums. So the idea was, upload a bunch of
Yeah.
photos and it would tag yourself in some of the photos and it go find you in all of the other photos. And then that had like a lot of traction initially when they launched, but then they could not retain users. Right, like nobody
Right.
found like a recurring
Hmm.
use case to come and upload photos on the slower internet connections they had over. Now there's a common feature in Google Photos and
Yeah.
iPhotos and stuff, but then they were the first to do it. So they were at the time I joined, they were looking to revamp. Like they'd assembled an incredibly smart bunch of folks, computer vision specialists, and software engineers to build this thing. They were looking to apply that tech to something else that had actual business value. So they were exploring a couple of different directions. It was really fascinating for me. They were like.com was the product we ended up building starting at that point. And but what is more fascinating, so the two solutions they tried to apply this technology of visual similarity, which is what they had developed, was one was e-commerce, the other was dating, which is a very interesting side story. They were looking to, but then the former they made more business sense, so they pursued it. Like.com, they found product market fit doing tech search for shopping,
Hmm.
but using computer vision techniques. So they'd look at images, extract characteristics out of them, and tag this thing as such so that you can convert something, a query, a text search query into like a filter. Like if you're searching for red high heel shoes, it would return results that were actually red and actually had high heels based on the images. And it was solving a particular problem. Merchants were putting a lot of spam in their text data that were describing images, and most other search engines were not doing a good job, and this mattered particularly in apparel, right, and especially women's apparel. So that's where we found product market fit, started growing a lot. It was a very interesting journey for me, right? Like one, there were incredibly smart folks that I got to work with on very deep problems. Two, I realized that like while I thought I was joining the company to solve hard problems, you
Hmm.
realize that whether you're solving a hard problem or not a very hard problem, the day to day work is still always going to feel like a grind. Like it doesn't matter how interesting the problem is, the day to day is a grind. Right, and ultimately you needed a lot of hard work and so kind of what I realized was the fact, one, you had to kind of believe overall in what the company as a whole was trying to build and whether that would be a successful business problem, right? Like to solve that, whether it's a valuable business problem to solve, you have to believe that. Right, and you have to work with very smart folks because it's going to take a lot, and not the smart kind folks if you're working with, it makes uh, the journey more enjoyable. Um, which is what I took away from that experience. Spent about 4 years there. Did a lot of backend engineering, distributed systems, but I've also done other stuff. I've built front end, I've built internal tools. I've been kept the site up at various points in time. Um, then all kinds of roles that you can imagine at an early stage startup, being an early engineer. Got to experience a lot of the highs and lows. Spent about 4 years there, and then before we got acquired by Google. But that was my time at Light.com.
Amazing. I think.
Actually,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah, go ahead.
actually, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. Like I started with them in Bangalore, right? Like I told, and about a year and a half in, what they decided was they were going to shut down the office in Bangalore and move some of us to the US. And so and to me at that point, like I kind of wasn't actually sure I wanted to move to the US, but then like I was enjoying my time in Bangalore, but then I didn't want to stop working with
Yeah.
the folks I was working with, like, especially my manager. I was like I didn't want to, and I thought I'm going to go to the US for a year and then I'll come back. Right, that was my intent at that time. I went and I ended up staying 8 years.
No, I think fantastic. I think there is the entire like.com story has an underlying thing. I think since you were early in your career, right? Uh, just kind of to clarify for our users more or for listeners morely, when we now when you have seen all the phases of a product, right? Now you can identify what a PMF is, a product market fit is, right? But the moment you are joining a firm or you're not very experienced folk, right? So how do you tackle this PMF problem? Because a lot of will not come to you, not come from you. It will come to you from, say, your management, right? Or some from, say, a product manager, right? So how do you tackle when you see a conflict between your vision of the product and the vision that the company is seeing, right? Because there at times you start doubting your credibility or your because you're early in your career, right? So, and since you highly spoke about like.com being maybe they were too ahead of their times at that time, right? Because they were doing all this vision experiments, which is a common feature right now, right? So what are your suggestions to folks who are joining early age startups and are having visionary ideas and visionary problems to solve and have to stay put with? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question, Amitesh. What, like, from what I have seen, right? Like, I mean, as an early in your career, I think one of the most important things you can develop as an engineer is user understanding. So hey, why is anybody using the software that we're building? Like a lot of young engineers have encountered, very smart folks only care about the tech, right? They're like, product's going to tell me what to do, or somebody's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it. That's what I excel at, right? But ultimately, you're going to be most successful over the this thing of a career, over the duration of a career, if you understand what allows the company to make the money that you get paid, right? Like in salary. And so try to get as close to the problem that the product you're working on, that the company you're working at is solving for the end users, and try to understand that deeply, and and keep asking questions, be curious about it, and um, don't shy away from talking to a lot of folks, offering suggestions and trying to get involved, and trying to come up, like I love it when young engineers come up with product suggestions of, hey, why can we not improve this? Hey, why does it work this way? Why is it broken this way? Right, and that shows, like, uh, I people who are curious about that, I think, tend to be successful in a in the long term. um, about identifying product market fit itself, right? Like there are different phases, right? If you join an early stage company, even pre-product market fit, it can be incredibly rewarding as an engineer, right? As if you're the person who gets to, it can be definitely be one of the most rewarding phases if you're the person who iterates on a product enough to build and get to product market fit. But there is like it's almost like there are two different stages. Like when you're doing that part of iteration, getting to product market fit, the thing that matters most is velocity, like how quickly you're able to iterate and try new ideas, experiment on new things, right? And once you have something that works, the scaling is an entirely different type of journey, right? And needs uh, and needs folks with deep expertise in different areas to be able to do that. Um, and so you don't necessarily need to, if you're looking for a company for evaluating it, you don't necessarily need to be the one making sure their product market fit, because even pre-product market fit you can have a very successful and enriching experience. But the main aim is to identify the stage that you're in, and I'm sure the company does a good job of identifying that and adapting your mentality according to that.
Right. I think it's very important. You should be trying to see this as an entire journey, right? At an initial of your career, what kind of experiences would that will give you enough exposure to kind of understand. Yeah, this is the area which I'm more efficient. These are the areas which I kind of don't like, right? And accordingly take a call based on the stage of that. Company, or maybe in a stage of your career, right, where you want to go, right? Perfect. I think talking about stage, I think there's an interesting it was a combination of startup getting acquired by Google, right? And how was that experience, Murali? Because you are coming from a startup ecosystem where, as you mentioned, you did almost everything, right? From back end, front end, whatever it takes to develop a good product, right? And then it was acquired by Google. The vision became different, right? At Google, they had their own set of processes. It was more about integrating the product into their entire ecosystem. So how was that experience working, the style of work, and how did you adjust to that? What was your experience back then when like.com was acquired by Google?
So actually, like, before, like when I interviewed at like.com, I also interviewed at Google and I didn't get
Wow.
through, right? Like, and when I was in college, Google was like
Yeah.
one of my dream jobs, right? In the sense that I thought that this was the coolest company that exists at that time. And then when we actually got acquired, like I was like not so sure. Like this is what, because I was like so immersed in the startup world and I really enjoyed that. And it was like, am I really going to enjoy this? And to some extent, my fears did pan out. Like the first, like when you go to Google, when Google acquires you, they interview every single engineer. Like at least they did. They used to do at that time. They interviewed all of us, and then we cleared the interview, and then we got the offer. The first like year was like a pretty much a honeymoon phase, right? Like it was Google campus in Mountain View. It was pretty
Yeah.
fantastic there. Like they had like 20 odd cafes at that time, and like football fields and basketball courts and swimming pool and whatnot. And it's like and definitely did enjoy that initially. But over time, I really didn't enjoy it as much. Like the pace of learning wasn't there, right? Like while Google was at that time, I felt like it's probably the best run large company. It was still a very large company for my
Yeah.
liking. I just enjoyed the smaller setups, I think, more, where you just have a greater pace of learning, even if you are um, uh, even if you don't have all the support or all the perks and all that, that just was like more valuable to me. Definitely, I stayed 5 years at Google. I definitely felt like I stayed 2 years too long at the end of it. Like it was like I made the decision to stay longer for like personal reasons, and I definitely felt I stayed, like I wasn't getting anything. I was, of course, I was getting paid, and that was awesome. But from a career development perspective, I didn't feel like I was getting. And the other thing was, at Google, you learn as you're building on technology, like I always had this thing in my mind, I want to do my own startup, right? But what you learn at Google is how to use other Google technologies. You don't some of the techniques and principles do apply, like, but you don't gain a lot of useful knowledge that you immediately are able to apply outside, because the open source world is different, right? And I did feel that at that time. Um, so yeah, that's how I felt about Google.
Yeah, and I think interesting bit comes after Google, right? Once you left Google, and then you're founder of another startup that again got acquired by Clary, right? And hence this, right? So what was I'll just try to put a simple comparisons, right? Because you had two experiences of acquisition. One, obviously, as as an engineer who was building fantastic product. Then you were a founder of a company, obviously taking care of the entire tech side. Then again, it was acquired by Clary. So what are the two? You have seen two acquisitions. Now, can you just put things into perspective? What was your experience while you were at Light.com and then again at Minute? So how was it, right? Can you just put some thoughts into that, Murali?
So they can't have been more different. Like, it's very, very different, right? Definitely, I'm sure some experience from that acquisition, like, being one of the engineers leading a lot of stuff, was helpful in, like, actually, when we were getting when the startup I founded got acquired by Clary. But the actual experience of the companies, the acquisition, like, Google was, Google's, of course, Google, one of the largest companies. Clary, when Clary acquired us, had like about 600 people. Right? It's a very different in terms of scale. Google comes in, and like one of the first things was essentially the product that we worked on at Light.com was shut down. Right? What we were doing was, Google does consider it a successful acquisition, but success for them was essentially integrating our technology into Google Shopping stack, and like, they were just happy for somebody to be responsible for dealing with apparel shopping on Google Shopping, right? And that was us. So we rewrote all our code into Google's code base, and everything was like a shock. Like, we went from writing like hundreds of lines of code a day often, to like, where if somebody had like a couple of hundred lines of PR done in a week, they would feel like, okay, we did a good job this week. It's like, entirely crazy. When Wingman, which is the startup I co-founded, got acquired by Clary, it had a very strong strategic fit. From the market perspective, both are sales tech products selling to a similar audience, and like, it's very, very natural. So what we saw was an acceleration in our business, right? When we rebranded to Clary Copilot recently, we saw it grow even faster than it was. A lot of customer demand. The products are very, very strategic, right? And we got to build on top of what we built, and accelerate, which has been a very, uh, uh, is challenging, but on the whole, a pleasant experience, because you get to see the thing you worked so hard grow even faster,
Right.
which is
Yeah,
fulfilling.
yeah. I think we just touched upon this idea in the section where we spoke about a product market fit, right? Because there is a vision of a product, right? And uh, if obviously in acquisition there are changes to that vision, that yes, this product might solve these problems, or on the whole it might solve certain things, right? uh, the moment there is a huge divergence from the actual vision of the product, then you see a sense of a detachment from that product, right? And as you rightly mentioned, when you were seeing it was just a simple integration process for Google, just integrate and it will enhance a part of user experience, right? But for you at at Light.com, it was not that. It was like you had a larger vision of that entire idea, right? Which was kind of fulfilled at Wingman and at Clary, that yes, your problem of sales stack was solved, was Wingman was solving the same problem, and obviously Clary was working the same domain. So when the vision comes to fruition, then the excitements and it will take care of its due course, right? And not that feeling of detachment will not go away, right? So fantastic, I think. Amazing discussions. So just one on that note, right? Did you ever find, Murli, that because you had this, the if you see the journey, startup, then Google, then leaving Google, and then starting up again, right? So had you ever thought that I am leaving something big to just start off fresh? Had that baggage? Was that baggage really there, or no? You were very sure that no, I want to start something of my own. Had this idea and make sure that this idea is kind of it will be successful, because generally it does not happen like this, right? You always had an idea, okay, there is an idea, but the entire end goal is not seen clearly at the very beginning, right? So had that baggage really played a role in taking your decision from Google to starting Wingman and then certainly Clary?
So I think like like, to be honest, like I did not know what startup I wanted to do, except I wanted to start up. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was running. That was a background thread during my time at Google, because I'd been at a startup. I'd seen like I okay, like I had seen friends who worked with me in the past, start their own companies and be successful, and I wanted to be like that. Like that's honestly the one thing that was like, it was always there in the back of my head. Of course, Google's a very hard place to leave, right? Like there's like, you get paid very well, you have the perks, you honestly don't have to work that hard. It's chill. So you can, you have good work-life balance. There's a lot going on. The Bay Area is a nice place to do a lot of outdoor stuff. I was very into all that. This is a tough thing to leave. Um, and of course, there is like a lot of uncertainty and self-doubt, right? Like you don't know. It's like, I want to start up, but what am I going to do? Who am I going to start up with? Is it going to be successful? You don't know any of that. Right. But at some like I think the thing that drove me to it eventually was like, I just felt like, okay, I like I cannot be successful long term at a place like Google. Like if I'm not being if I don't find the learning, if I'm not excited by it, I'm not going to be motivated to put in the work needed to really succeed long term. So I started feeling like the only way I'm going to be, going to whatever, live to my full potential or whatever, is if I started up on my own, because I wanted to do it, and this wasn't giving me the drive. Like I just so I decided to basically quit and move back to India and start up. That's what drove that.
Yeah, I think I just recall an interesting a quote from Steve Jobs from his, I think, Stanford speech, right? The very famous Stanford convocation speech, where he mentioned that after getting obviously fired from the company he himself founded, right, and starting from scratch, right? So he mentioned a very beautiful thing, right? That the heaviness of being something was replaced by the lightness of being nothing, right? And that the his next ventures were stemming from that lightness of being nothingness. So I certainly can relate your story to this, from spending a lot of time in Google and seeing all the the overwhelming experiences at Google and in the Bay Area. It would have been very difficult to leave Bay Area, Google, and then coming back to India and starting up your own. But certainly that that feeling of nothingness and starting something of your own, that excitement, it really drove you. And obviously a huge lesson for whomsoever is listening to this podcast, that yes, that your innate ability to see things and excite you. What are the things that excite you, and make something, starting off your own, have the feeling of ownership, right? That yes, this is what I'm creating, right? So that will obviously take you a lot of places, certainly. So cool. I think that to with that, a lot of serious stuff, Murli. So just kind of to lighten things up, or maybe to get the pace a little bit more. Let's do a quick rapid fire. Obviously, it's not. It's a conventional rapid fire, but it will be more related to your life and the work you have done in your end. Okay, so be ready. Four rapid fire questions. You should not think before answering them. First question: startup culture or top companies? I think I know the answer, but yes,
Startup
still
culture.
yes.
Startup culture
Uh,
for sure.
multitasking or one focus at a time?
Focus. Although I mean, I always have to multitask, but the only way I can do it is by focusing on one thing at a time and switching. So that's pretty much the only way I can actually multitask. I don't think I can truly multitask.
Okay, travel for a break or pursue hobby for a break?
Travel for a break.
How about
I
combining
mean,
hobby as traveling?
the,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
nice.
I have lots of hobbies. I have lots of hobbies. If I have a break, I want to pursue many of them.
Nice, nice. Settling up abroad or settling up in India?
Settling in India, I definitely my long-term plan is to settle in India.
Cool, fantastic. I think, and I think now the entire story sums up, right? You have, leaving Google, coming to India, starting Wingmin, then Clary happens. Obviously, you are traveling to a lot of places, but uh, and obviously the space is also, it's improving, or kind of, the tech culture is obviously now, if not better than Bay Area, but at least at par with what these guys are doing, right? So certainly the future is here, and let's look forward. With that, a small question, because obviously you started your entrepreneurial journey, right? Um, so as you shifted from, from technical work to now managing teams, right, and various aspects of your startup, where what were the most significant, so what were the most significant lessons that you kind of learned about leadership, and entrepreneurship in general, because you are doing, maybe in a technical role, managing small teams, right? But now, since you are co-founding a company, uh, you have to foresee a lot of things, right? So what are the two or three important lessons that you may want to share with our audience on leadership, or entrepreneurship in general?
On entrepreneurship, probably I think like everyone tells you it's hard, but you kind of don't really appreciate how hard it is till you do it, which is good, I think, in a way, because uh, it takes like a certain not knowing what you're getting into, really, for people to start and eventually make successful startups. So it's something you don't realize before you do. And the reason is because there is no one path to success, right? Like, you can listen to anyone's advice, people can listen to my advice. What my journey is probably applicable exactly as is to zero people, right? Or anybody's, for that matter, because if it was, then it wouldn't be startups. You're trying to do something new, right? You're trying to do something unique, which is when you'll be successful. So no so all the yarn and everything that you get in the world is like, you have to tweak it. But then the other, like the startups are full of these things. The flip side to it is that very few, like, you can't, like, I don't think humans have the bandwidth. Like, a lot of people say, think about everything from first principles, think about apply your first principle original thinking to everything. But I don't think humans are actually capable of doing that in except in a few facets. Like, every one of us can maybe have really original thought and original approaches to maybe two three facets of what we need to do. But in a startup, you have to do a lot of things. So you do really have to learn best principles and practices from a lot of other folks, but pick the two or three you are that your original thought is going to make a difference at, and apply that, right? Like, because that's really what can uh, that's perhaps the closest thing I can think of to, like, like an approach that many people can take to entrepreneurship, right? Like you asked about leadership and entrepreneurship. Like the other thing I have found really useful, again, depends on personality, it doesn't apply to everyone. I've always found it easiest to, you're asking a lot of people to follow you, put faith in you. That if you're a founder, and you're trying to bring them along, you're selling a story, you're selling a vision. Um, the easiest way is to be as open and transparent about your company, the challenges and what you have as possible, right? It's really hard to do, right? Because a lot of people don't do it because as a found, like you have to, like, it's hard to be entirely, you have to inspire some level of confidence, right? That's naturally, humans tend have
Yep.
a tendency to follow people who exude a lot of confidence. But if you exude confidence, but in the beginning you're wrong a lot, right? A lot of things don't pan out like you say. Like you think you're optimistic about something, and you pursue that and it doesn't pan out. And you try something else and doesn't pursue that. It's really important, and so people are very hesitant to actually showcase, how they're actually thinking to others in the company. But I think it's better if you do as much as you can, as much as possible, because if you say, if you say something that doesn't happen too many times, then people kind of lose faith in you, and it's difficult to inspire confidence. So in like a very in like a very weird way, uh, and not necessarily just for what reasons that one might assume, being like as transparent as possible about what's going on, is very beneficial to bring folks along the journey, make people, and it also selects for the right kind of people who are kind of invested in the ups and downs, and take that as a challenge rather than, people who want to set paths.
Yeah, interesting. I think we'll just stay with this thought, Murli, that it's very important to bring people along, and especially when you are co-founding or you are managing a team. You have to sell that vision. You have to be jack of all trades and at least master of one, right? As you mentioned, that at least should be touching upon things, but there should be one thing that you should be really excelling at, right? Try to find out that what is that one thing that you are really good at, right? So a larger or a crucial, very critical part of any startup, or maybe managing large teams, right, is to onboard a lot of people, right, and right people. So what are the things that you look in candidates, especially if you stick to our audiences, right, tech candidates, right? So what are the key factors or key parameters that you look in these candidates while you're hiring them? And uh, and obviously this is a problem area which the entire industry is facing, right? Hiring is a huge problem, right? Maybe it's a quality problem, maybe it's a quantity problem, sometimes it's a time problem. Yet people are not getting good people at right time. So what are your experiences, and can you in your experiences point out to a biggest problem that you have faced in hiring? So that's one part of the question. Or maybe the second part is, what do you see in these candidates while you're hiring them?
So I think what you look for, who you hire, and things like that changes as your company scales, right? Like at the early stage, you're at the very early stage, you're looking for generalists who are, who have the ability to, quickly iterate, who are looking at new things and fundamentally excited uh, to take these ambiguous journeys, right? Like where the path's not defined, and have a lot of energy to be, to be on that early stage journey. And as you grow and scale, things change, right? Like sometimes you tend to set up more specialized roles. You tend to spread up, you tend to look at team structure, team organization, levels, and really how to set up the organization for scale. And the kind of people you're often looking to hire at these 2 points are different. um, Common things, right? like fundamentally, like why is this so hard to do? Because most of what I said right now has very little actual evaluation techniques.
Right.
Like how do you actually evaluate, like even we say, hey, we want to hire, people say I want to hire curious people. Like how do you know, right? Like
Yeah.
how do you say you want to hire smart people? Like how do you, like most of these things are really really hard to evaluate. Of the closest proxy people have is often either they do two things. You're trying to evaluate, you're trying to figure out smart folks in tech. You're often looking at, hey, how well are they doing in lead code problems or whatever, as a
Yeah.
proxy for this, which is like, which is changed into a proxy for how prepared is somebody, right? Like which is um, uh, it's and then you, alternatively, if you're looking to find evidence of, hey, does this person work hard, or does this person have a good work ethic, etc., you're often looking at their achievement in previous jobs, which honestly is pretty good. Is a pretty good proxy, but it tends to select, like you, but then you're competing with, for a small pool of people, with all of the companies in the world who want that same smaller pool of people, and then it becomes a, hey, I just can't hire the people or pay the salaries that the people who have the profiles that I'm looking for want, right? Then you're in a very very competitive space. At Wingman, what we always tried to do was, we tried to, we are like, we were not looking at people's pedigree and stuff. We tried to look past that. We're not going to insist on that, because that means that we would have to pay salaries that we can't afford to pay. Right. However, we are still looking for very very smart folks. And some of the best proxies we found was trying to create problems to evaluate people on, that were based on some of the hardest real world problems we encountered, right, as opposed to lead code questions to evaluate folks on. Uh, and so we worked very hard on creating. This is much, when you try to do it, this is actually much harder to do than it seems on the surface,
Yeah.
to create really good interview questions from your actual work. But if you do, it pays off, because you are able to you're able to interview a wider, you can use them as tests, you can do them as screening tests even initially, and then also actually use these type of questions in your interview, in your problems. You get to see a wider pool of candidates, evaluate them, and the people you select are, closer to the actual problem set that you're doing. In my ideal world, right, like if I could do it, my ideal world would be to work with candidates for a week before we decide whether to hire them or not. But it usually is impossible, because
Yeah.
most candidates have something else going on. They don't have a week to dedicate to, working with you so you can evaluate them. So it doesn't play out in practice. You're still constrained by, the timelines of what you can fit into an interview. This is the closest I have found to something that works.
Yeah, and I think really valid points, Murali, because we do this at scale, right? We at Recro, we are day in and day out, hiring folks, interviewing folks, and especially in tech backgrounds, right? With tech background. So and this is the same challenge that we also encountered, that uh, you can assess someone's technical ability to a certain extent, right? But the larger decision making happens at the non-tech layer, right? Whether the candidate is, as you said, curious enough or not, right? Smart enough or not, right? And a lead code, or maybe a designed, customized, a personalized test may not be the best way to get the smartest candidate out of the system, right? So, and that's why I think we our assessment system is something like, we start by doing a very general screening test, where uh, people get eliminated rather than selected, right? And it's kind of an elimination route. And the second part of the interview, second layer of the interview, is again technical in nature, but we emphasize a lot on use cases, right? And it's also customized to someone's year of experience in a particular tech, because obviously someone's front end maybe like he or she is 5 years of experience, but in front end he or she may only work for say a couple of years or 1 year, right? So that again will be tested accordingly, right? Whether he or she is having that depth in say a front end, or maybe whatever tech we are looking at, right? And then we couple this with a interesting round. We called it an aspiration round, because obviously a lot will depend on whether you really want to work there or not, right? Whatever companies you are getting hired for, right? And that's why we try to understand whether someone's aspiration is in line with what the job requirements are, and we combine these with candidate competency, their aspiration, coupled with what opportunity they are getting. So we call it a cow equation. If the equation breaks anywhere in terms of the opportunity is not aligned with candidates competency or their aspiration, then the equation breaks, right? And that's how we have tried to solve this at scale, because obviously at scale the problems are also at scale, right? And the problems which you mentioned, certainly the critical problems that are the hiring, especially tired industries facing, and we're trying to solve it step by bringing in some some aspects to it. Fantastic. I think
Very good.
yeah, just I think we have few questions also, but before diving into those questions, Murli, I think one one what advice you would like to offer to uh, you know to aspiring entrepreneurs who are, because obviously a lot of these folks are trying to consider having their own tech startup, right? So what are your advice to them, especially from tech perspective, right? And especially in such such market where it is you never know what's going to happen in next couple of months, right? So so what are your advices to the budding entrepreneurs who are trying to launch their own tech ventures?
So I have I can have a few pieces of advice that is generic enough, right? Like usually, um, uh, one is to find great co-founders, right? It is something people repeat often, but when as people are looking to start up, it's like tough, right? Because if you don't already have somebody you're working with, it's difficult. It takes a lot of time, right? Like, but that effort is so worth it. It's really it's difficult, starting up is difficult, and the solo founders, I know I have like insane respect for them because it's just so tough. You don't like you can never truly you can never be truly level. You can never truly level with like your investors, employees, nobody to the level that you can with co-founders. And so having people both who you are both who you are comfortable working with, but also who you respect and trust and can really work together for a long time, because this takes a decade, right? Is important. I think that's one. And the other thing is, I would say, like have an idea of what your like going in, have an idea of what your personal runway is. A lot of people will approach this as, hey, I need to get to start up, I need to get funded, or like to start up I need to do, like they look at the first goal of starting up as raising money, right? And what you should do is you should flip that and think like, hey, I have create you for most folks, except like people who are fresh out of college, of course, who just finished college, have a different perspective. But for people who've been working for a little bit, create some amount of savings and figure out what your personal runway is that you can go before you need before you need that capital. And if possible, maybe if you don't even need any capital, that's probably the best situation. And so set and think about that deeply and go into it, like, and don't equate the idea of starting up to the idea of fundraising. Like they're two different things, and not um, and and raising money doesn't need to happen for you to start up. um, that's probably what I have to say there.
Fantastic. I think really valid points. I think and especially the kind of glory that has been associated with fundraising, valuation these days, that a startup success is not, obviously not measured by how that startup particularly is doing in terms of getting acquiring new customers or helping them or making their experience better, but more on the valuation front, how much funding they have been raised. Obviously it's an output of something, but too much weightage has been given to funding. So and obviously I'll just add to your point, kind of summarizing your statements, that it's very important to identify, and it has been a theme of the entire our conversation today, that you have to identify your niche, right, your mood, what kind of problems are you solving. And if you're very sure that, yeah, this is the problem, I would really like to go ahead, identify that, yes, I will take X amount of time in solving this problem, making it to go to market, and do I have a runway till that point of time or not, and evaluate your options accordingly. Because it's not, first of all, it's a tough market, but it's not also a zero sum game, right? Whether you will either win or lose, there are chances that obviously a lot of learnings will happen that will help you in your career, right? Cool. One more questions we gonna we have. Yes, we have. So I'll add a flavor to this question, Murli, because we have been getting a lot of such questions. Uh, First, I think from a tech perspective, that obviously the AI phenomena that has really taken the entire industry by by storm, right? So what are your suggestions to people who are maybe say a 2 years experience or 3 years experience and are doing the traditional way, not the AI way, right? The traditional way, right? Now there are two ways to solve problems, right? So what are your suggestions to them? Because you also have seen a lot of troughs and ebbs and flows in the industry, right? How things were tackled, right? Automations and everything, right? But so can you draw some parallels to that and suggest the early age techies who are listening to this podcast, please?
I think the techies who are early in their careers today have a big advantage. Because what I see in the industry is folks who have been in the industry for a while, they continue to do things the way they've always been doing. They don't necessarily adapt. They're not forced to adapt. But will eventually, become dinosaurs, right? Because
Yeah.
technology is changing so fast. If and I think young folks have this advantage because not only do young folks tend to be more curious, and young folks have the ability to pick up on new stuff. It's not like you have a decade of baggage with you, forcing you to think in a certain way. And especially in tech, people who've been in the industry for a while get all pessimistic about it, and lose the optimism that they have when they're younger. Right, and so young folks have this phenomenal advantage that you have a new wave of technology that is changing how we are all working, and especially in tech, it's so influential. The thing that you can do most is spend a lot of time playing with the tools and the new tools and keeping up with what's coming, right? Like it, and the other advantage young folks have is a lot more time. Like as people get older, they have families and they have they don't have as much time to dedicate to their craft. Uh, but young folks who are curious can, like if I mean, I firmly believe that the new wave of AI technologies is going to change how we work in tech. There is no doubt for me, right? And what young
Agree.
folks have is the advantage to play with these technologies, get really familiar, develop their own viewpoints, and that's what you should be doing. And that's what you should be doing, figuring out what applies where, and be really curious um, and go at it.
Correct. I think for the younger folks, it's very important to kind of just assimilate yourself to the technology changes, right? And kind of for not so younger folks, it's more about how quickly you are adapting to this change, because eventually uh, technology will not differentiate between a young techie or an old techie, right? It eventually, it's a machine, and obviously the decisions will be based on the efficiency that will be brought in by any of these guys, right? So yeah, so it's more about adapting to the changes. what the systems are providing you. Coming to the next question. uh, okay, interesting. So what are the certain things that a startup, especially an early age startup, should be doing to get noticed in the, in the larger scheme of things? Just, I think this is coming from from your Google experience, getting acquired by Google, right? So what are those things that these startups should be focusing on to get noticed in the, in the broader spectrum? Only.
I think in the I think there are different types of things, right? Like if you're looking to get noticed to acquire customers, right? That's the this thing of the that's this thing of the job. Fundamentally, startups have an uphill battle when they start, right? To have, especially if you're to get customers, because you don't like no one trusts you, right? And so you have to. It's really difficult
Yeah.
to get to the point where you have enough folks trusting you, and then you can build like a cycle of it. So you really have to work hard to find those early customers who trust you, who have enough of a problem that you're solving deeply, that that they are willing to take a risk on you, and grow from there. From like an acquisition type of perspective, it's hard. Like the common saying is, startups are acquired, not sold. You
Yeah.
really can't go convince a Google that they should buy you. Like Google needs to be looking to solve a specific problem, from their business perspective, and you happen to be the one that can that fit that mold best for them, right? At a price point that they can pay to solve that problem. Like.com was acquired because Google was worried that Amazon was going, like Google did not
Yeah.
have good search for apparel, and they were worried that people are going to start their searches on Amazon, and search, like commercial searches with commercial intent, like when you're shopping for something, is like very valuable to Google. So like were looking for the problem to solve, and here was a team solving a problem like that, and so it made sense. Like, so you can't really engineer these things. The only thing you can do is develop relationships with, you can identify who are the potential
Yeah.
players who maybe have a potential problem that you can solve, and develop some type of relationship with them so that you're in their mind when they're looking to make a move. But outside of that, it's very, very hard to engineer these things.
No, I think rightly said. It's more about creating values, right? What kind of values you are creating for maybe your customers, or maybe, for people who are looking to acquire you. Fantastic, Murali. I think I do understand that we have passed 60 minutes, and I really want to continue this, but I think we have some time foundation. So first of all, I think thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and making this conversation happen. I am sure, I think a lot of things to be taken from this conversation, and I hope uh, we made justice to your journey, by asking relevant questions. And I hope people who are listening to this podcast will draw similar inspirations from it. Any parting thoughts, Murli?
No, thank you so much for having me. I had a fantastic conversation. I do hope, that some of the folks listening in got some value out of this. You can. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm sure folks can find me and reach out to me if they have any questions. If there are more questions here that I didn't get to answer now, feel free to message me, and I'll definitely take a look, and get back to folks. I'm glad to have had the opportunity to bunch of young engineers.
Perfect. Again, can't thank you enough, Murli. Thank you so much, and thank you so much everyone who has tuned in to this interesting podcast. I'll again reiterate, we are uh, obviously we are on a lot of the channels, traditional channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, but we are also started publishing our podcast on Spotify. So do check us out there, and with that, let's bid adieu to Murli, and say thank you, Murli, for joining in, and thank you everyone for tuning in for this session. Hope you have a good day, and see you soon for another interesting session. Thank you, guys. Thank you.